So I went there with my camera and I filmed how they were making the drug, everything, from picking the leaves, the coca leaves, to the powder, everything. But what I noticed there was that those people there were simple peasants. They were no criminals. They had no idea, that this cocaine that they're doing there is having such an impact elsewhere, in Europe, in the US. They were into this drug trafficking at the very low base of it because they couldn't survive otherwise. So this means that this was a social problem. I met a guy, for instance, who was running a small coca lab, and he was in this because he was hired by some other guys who loaned him money because his mother was in a hospital. His mother was in a hospital, and she needed some surgery that was very expensive. So he borrowed some money, and in exchange for that money, he had to run this drug lab, to repay his loan. Now, you have many such people, many. So if you're looking at corruption, and if you're looking at crime, it's always about integrating systems. It's not only about Croatia and its inner corruption, inside corruption. It's about Croatia being part of a bigger system. If you think about, all these mobsters using offshore companies, one of the questions that we asked ourselves quite recently, and we created a project on this, was, okay, so everywhere you look, you find offshore companies. There's lots of offshore companies, and some of them indeed are legal companies because people are using offshore companies just in order not to pay too much taxes. And in our part of the world, we have lots of taxes, and that's okay. But then we looked for a different type of offshore companies. We looked for the type of offshore companies that ensure secrecy, the type of offshore companies that allow criminals to use proxies in order to hide their part in these companies. We looked at companies that buy all sorts of state-owned assets. We looked at companies that buy papers, that buy TV stations, radio stations, and we don't know who the owners are of these companies. And we also looked at, okay, so if they have all these offshore companies, who is establishing all these? Who is in this business of establishing offshore companies? We managed to find out that in Eastern Europe, you only have a few guys establishing offshore companies. It's not like you go to a site, on the internet and you look for, Seychelles, and you click on Seychelles and you say online, I'm going to make a company in Seychelles because it's an offshore haven and I'm going to, hide my ownership and all that. No. Actually, what's going on, you have a few guys in Eastern Europe that have the expertise, a few companies actually, that have the expertise to establish layers of secrecy. So what we did, for instance, during the month of August and September, we approached some of these guys, and we posed as their clients. We told them that we want to establish such companies. We have lots of money that we have, in some countries, and we want to launder this money. We have deals with all sorts of things, and we want to hide ownership of these companies. They created for us layers and layers of companies. We established, for instance, a company in Cyprus that was owned by a company in Seychelles, that was owned by another company in the Isle of Man, that was owned by a fourth company elsewhere. So the idea is that there's a handful of guys who are providing this type of services. Now we went for this. We we had quite a successful story on this issue. We highlighted who these guys were, and funnily enough, these guys were not local guys. The big guys in these companies, they're not local guys. The main headquarters, for instance, of one of the biggest offshore formation company is actually in Auckland, New Zealand, with also headquarters in a tiny island called Vanuatu. And it's run by two guys from the UK who have expertise for tens of years in this area. Now, these guys establish companies, and there are pending investigations by many law enforcement agencies. They established companies for drug traffickers from Mexico, for instance, for the Sinaloa cartel. And that led, the fact that the Sinaloa cartel was laundering money through these companies led to the downfall of a big US-based bank called Wachovia Bank. They were involved, for instance, in a deal, in an arms deal between North Korea and Iran. There was a plane full of weapons, loaded with weapons, that had to land in Thailand and was seized in Thailand. It turned out that deal was done, that illegal deal was done, again, through a company based in Auckland, established by the same two guys. Now, when the police in Thailand, which was cooperating with police in the U.S. and England, when they looked for who is the owner of that company that was, involved in this arms deal, they found a person called Lu Zhang. She's a Chinese woman, and she lives also in New Zealand. And she is selling hamburgers in Auckland. She is an employee of a hamburger place in Auckland, New Zealand. So the deal is this. Criminals are also, and she is now indicted for various counts, for various crimes, because she was the one that signed the papers. And this is very often the case with these criminals. Not only that they're hiding ownership, but they're exposing innocent people. This woman, she didn't know what she got into. She was receiving $50 for each company paper that she signed. For her, it was a good deal. But she had no idea that the company is involved in arms smuggling between North Korea and Iran. Now, I'll quickly run you through some of our methods, because I want to get to the solution part to this problem, to the corruption and this crime problem. As I mentioned, we are groups of journalists working in many countries. My organization is active here in this region, but we are connected, for instance, to an organization called FAIR, which is the Forum of African Investigative Reporters, and to an organization called ARIJ, which is the Organization of Arab Investigative Reporters. What we're doing is we're constantly exchanging data. And for this, we use secure web spaces where we post the information. And so, for instance, this is an example of a secured space. These here are the names of the people that have access to this secure space. And this is the information that we posted. This was an investigation where we connected cigarette business with criminals. We found the interests of criminals in the cigarette business. And, of course, we covered lots of this region because there's lots of this here. So each of these people here have access to this information. And so we're placing this information online for cross-checks. For instance, if in Romania I found out, that this guy, who owns a cigarette company is involved in some crime, I put this information here, and the guy from Bulgaria can check on the Registry of Commerce from Sofia if that guy owns some companies in Sofia. Now, the very same method is applied by the other guys. So we are always going for cross-searches, because the most important thing when you're investigating cross-border organized crime is that this is not happening in one country. It's happening in many countries, and it's fueling corruption in many countries. Besides this, what we are using is all sorts of all types of software. For instance, this is called I2. This is a software that is heavily used by law enforcement. I bet you that the Croatian intelligence services are also using this, and probably the police as well. What this allows you to do, just briefly, is, for instance, let's say you gather company data from various countries and you have 1,000 pages of information. Now, how are you going to match, if the same name shows up on the first page of this information and the 800th page? It's going to be very tough, to read 1,000 pages, of a book, basically, which is very, very boring because it's only names, company names, financial data, and all that. Now, this software allows you to work with hundreds of thousands of pages, of such pages. What it does is you input all the information into such software, and it finds all the links between similar entities, persons, names, dates of birth, whatever. So if one name shows up in the first page and in the 10,000 page, it finds the connections and it connects it visually, just like here. So there are various tools which are very, very important when it comes to investigative journalism and when it comes to investigating such very complex networks. So roughly, what we need for investigating high-level corruption that leads to low-level corruption, again, I'm stressing this, it's we need to have in place a group of journalists working and exchanging information. we need to have the know-how, and that means you need to know how to approach these crimes, because again, it's not about linear crimes. It's always, for instance, I was mentioning drug trafficking. Drug trafficking has huge impact on the environment. Now, you don't have many, you don't have coverage on that. How does drug trafficking impact environment? Well, it does in various ways. For instance, there is a lot of deforestation in Colombia because traffickers are cutting down the forest to plant coca. There are lots of oil spills because of the ships that leave Colombia, you know, with drugs for the U.S. or for Africa. There are various consequences of drug trafficking that we don't see because reporting is not deep enough, because we're only looking at it from a law enforcement point of view. We're looking at it at the crime, the person who's involved in the crime, the victim. It's not that simple. It should be, I mean, our coverage should be much more deeper than that. We need access to information. And people were talking here about access to information and the fact that it's very costly. And we are trying to find a solution to this, and I'll show you what our solution for now is. And we need tools to process this information, tools like that software that I showed you there. Now, I have published a book which I can give you. You can actually upload it from a site that I will highlight right now. It's free of charge. It's a book that is named Follow the Money. It's a guide for tracking corruption across borders. It talks about how to get company data from offshore havens. It talks about various software tools that you can use in order to process information. And it talks about methods. It talks about lots of things. But what I'm showing you right now here is something different. So you have this handbook here. But what I'm showing you is a website called the Investigative Dashboard. The Investigative Dashboard is a thing I created. It's not launched yet officially. It's going to be launched in about a week. And the Investigative Dashboard provides information, provides access to information. For instance, if you need data about a company from somewhere, there's a, let me try to refresh it, but probably 1 hour passed and the password is already expired, yes. I'll just input a new login because I want to show you this. So the idea is that this provides you, if you need information on a company, this is the place where you must go, even if the company is based in an offshore haven. We have a research desk. We have people who are skilled into finding out data about companies, even offshore companies. And there's a system on this website, I'll show you right away.